If you're in your early 50s, there's a really good chance that your home represents one of the largest assets you own. At some point, maybe not today, but you're going to consider either downsizing, moving closer to the kids, or getting into that home you've always dreamed of. That decision is a big one, and in my experience, most people don't give it nearly enough thought. That's why I sat down with Dan Maurer, a real estate agent here in the Finger Lakes, to talk about the process of buying and selling your home, to talk through things like how to pick an agent, what typically derails a sale, and how to read today's market, and why Zillow may not be the best way to gauge the value of your home. Whether you're thinking about selling today or in 5 to 10 years, today's talk is going to be worth your time. Let's get into it. Okay, I am excited today to be joined by Dan Maurer. Dan Maurer leads the Maurer McLennan team here in the Finger Lake regions, New York. They are a highly regarded real estate team and with multiple decades of experience leading teams that delivers on all types of market expertise, data-driven pricing strategies, and just really a client focus. And I'm really excited again to have Dan because as a financial planner, there are so many times when a home purchase, a home sale comes up. It's an important part of most people's lives, whether that's upsizing, downsizing, relocating. I mean, you name it, it's a big decision. And for most folks, it's either their largest or their second largest asset. So really understanding what's going on is super critical. Really what I wanted to do with Dan is I'll have Dan introduce himself really quickly. I just have a couple questions that I think will take us through kind of the life cycle of a sale. And, we'll go through those and then hopefully you guys will find this enlightening. So without further ado, Dan, thanks for joining. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it as well.
Dan, if you wouldn't mind, could you just give us a quick 2 minute or minute blurb on your background? I know you've worked in different industries before real estate, which I think is really exciting and allows you to bring a different perspective. But if you wouldn't mind just giving us kind of a quick background.
Sure, sure. So, in previous life, I was a chef, and was a chef down in Florida at a four-star Four Diamond hotel. Got out of the restaurant industry. I got in the restaurant industry when I was in kindergarten. I won my first baking contest, so I loved food. And got out of the restaurant industry in the 90s, late 90s, and bought an industrial and commercial janitorial outfit in Connecticut and ran that for about 10 years and was doing a lot of negotiation with the state of Connecticut and a lot of builders around central Connecticut, larger offices in the area. And my wife was getting her PhD at UConn, and she took a job here at Corning. And we moved here. I moved here sight unseen. I had never come to visit. And my first visit was a house hunting visit. We had a little bit of a difficult experience with our house hunting, and it was a very good prompt for me to look at real estate as a potential career move, with the negotiating background and a lot of building background, things like that. It really seemed to fit the bill. So that's what we did when we moved here in 2007.
Oh, that's great. And that's funny. I wonder now, looking back, if you'd ever recommend anybody to purchase a home sight unseen, but we'll get to that.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. We didn't purchase sight unseen, but I moved here without visiting.
Got it. Got it. Okay, good,
Yeah.
good. All right. So what I was thinking is I have a couple of questions that I hear a lot from clients, again, when it comes to purchasing, selling homes. And I thought that maybe we would just take this through like the life cycle.
Sure.
And one of the questions that we get a lot is, how do we pick a real estate agent? I find most people, maybe they have a friend who does it, maybe a neighbor, but how do you pick somebody? And are there a couple questions that you should be asking your real estate agent when you're trying to find somebody to work with?
Sure, sure. So I do have some notes here. I hope you don't mind if I do refer to them.
No, no, this is great.
So I did write some points that I thought you might ask. So I guess the best way to think about it is a more holistic approach rather than pointed. And think of your real estate agent as a risk manager, as someone who is helping you mitigate the risk in multiple different areas. And the things that you should probably be doing, number one, you should be interviewing a number of agents,
Okay.
at least two agents. A lot of people go with, like you said, someone they know, or they'll go with the person that gives them the highest price. What they should really be asking are questions that get to the core of how the agent operates, what their communication styles are like. They should be asking what systems and models do the agents have in place that ensure the risk mitigation aspect, that things are not falling through the cracks, timely communication. Um, all of these, I mean, when you're looking at picking an agent, a lot of people say, "Come to my house, tell me what my house is worth, and we'll pick the person
Right.
who gets the highest price."
Right.
And
Right.
we're all working with the same data. We're all looking at the same data. And if we're coming up with different pricing, many times agents are acutely aware of the fact that people will pick based on price sometimes. So they'll give you a higher price than they actually think you're going to get.
Hmm.
Your decision should be twofold. You should be first, who's the right person to market, represent my home, negotiate strongly, mitigate my risk. And then
Right.
secondly, what price should I offer it at? And that should be a completely separate aspect. Um,
Got it.
some of the questions that you should be asking would be, days on market, average list price sale price ratio, the ratio between what it was listed at and what it sold at. One number that agents are very reluctant to talk about is their original list price to sale price ratio. And people don't
Mm.
know that that's actually a statistic. And that's actually the number that the house was listed at when they originally listed versus what it sold at, rather than what it was listed at the time that they sold after any price drops. So
Hmm.
that's something you should be asking people about. Another thing is their marketing strategy. Is there an overarching concept to the marketing strategy, or is it a throw it at the wall, see what sticks type of thing?
Right.
We've gone with our team. It's got myself and Ruthie McLennan, who's been in the business for decades and decades. We have a really good mindset group, a good group of real estate minds that have been doing this for so long that we've broken the entire thing down to the base, rebuilt it top to bottom on what works, what doesn't, where do buyers actually buy from? Where's the psychological motivation for them to buy a house? All of that should be built in, and it should be an overarching model rather than hey, we stick you on the internet and we get you sold.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And as I mentioned, I love your data approach because in full disclosure, I'm on Dan's newsletter and I get a lot of good statistics that I just love as a financial planner and things like time to close and especially, hey, what are you selling versus what are you originally listing at? To me, that's just really good insight. So, a couple questions here on the actual transaction. So, um, when you see a buyer and seller agree, what are the reasons why it falls apart? I mean, I think that when I think of common things, inspections, financing, things like that, but I guess, is there anything that you can do as a buyer or seller to prepare yourself in advance to maybe get ahead of these common pitfalls?
And yes, and those common pitfalls are the most common.
Okay.
Inspection is by far number one. Number two is financing issues. And the things, I guess, some of where you can prepare for that is, on the sellers, it depends on what side you're on with it.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of it comes in with mindset. A lot of it is being prepared uh, for buyers, understanding that no house is perfect, understanding there's going to be issues with a house. And if you're
Right.
not working with an agent who's experienced enough, you're not going to be able to determine up front a number of those things. You're not going to notice those things. And a lot of them are going to come as a surprise. And surprises tend to freak people out. And once people get freaked out, that's when they start to try to cancel on you. So couple steps back in ensuring a contract gets to closing and doesn't get sidetracked by some of these things. Having a really good experienced agent representing your home that knows the other side, knows the other agent, is going to be very helpful in being able to prepare that agent. If I know that someone is not as experienced as I am, perhaps doesn't know a lot of things about the home, I'm going to be explaining those things to them up front to prepare
Hmm.
them and their buyer prior to them having the inspection. Explaining the contract terms very well. When you're a seller, having a pre-inspection is a fantastic way to mitigate that risk. It's not only a good way to know what you're looking at up front, you can
Hmm.
usually address it for pennies on the dollar if you do find issues up front. But it's also good negotiating strategy. You can disclose things up front that you found out about the home that you don't plan on taking care of, that the buyers are aware of before they place the offer, and they place the offer accepting those items. So there's multiple different ways to mitigate those items up front. As far as the financing goes, using a good, well-regarded local bank
Hmm.
rather than some of the less
National banks or
yeah
yeah.
national banks and places that tend to run into issues. Um, Making sure that your attorney has already gotten the deed work taken care of and some of the survey work taken care of, because surveys are some of the main things dragging out closings currently. And
Mhm.
we're starting to run into a lot of survey issues that are killing deals right now as well.
Got it. Got it. No, that's good. And I think it's a great point on the relationship between the agents because I imagine there's a lot that goes down behind the scenes that the buyers and sellers are maybe protected from and are ironed out without causing people to get upset. But I agree also to go in without hiding things, be upfront and because whether I think in any part of a transaction, a surprise is going to freak people out. Because the next question is, oh, what else are they hiding, right? What else are we going
Yep.
to find under the covers, so to speak? So,
Yep.
one last question. So, I guess with that in mind, um, is there any, like, if you had to pick as part of the transaction, anything that a buyer or seller should focus on to say, look, the thing that's most in your control is going to be the financing or the condition of your home or the inspection, getting it ready. Is there any one thing that you would say is paramount, or is it just a combination of everything?
It really is a combination, but I think being proactive um, in gathering your team, making sure your team is communicating,
Mm,
your agent and your attorney and your lender and your all of those moving pieces. Being proactive and making sure that number one, they're communicating together, and number two, that you're communicating with them on a regular basis. One of the places that we see a lot of issues is where our clients are not necessarily in contact with their attorney on a regular basis. They don't know what's going on. They're looking for info, and the attorneys are overwhelmed with work, honestly, right now. So they're not, if you're the squeaky wheel, if you're calling them on a weekly basis,
right.
your file's somehow gonna find its way up a little bit in in that pile of files that they've got. So reaching out to them, that type of thing is going to be key. In terms of sellers right now, the market is really finicky.
Mhm.
The market is we're low on inventory. Average days on market are higher than they've been in the past couple of years. They're still rising, even though we're still low on inventory.
Yeah, it seems
We're
counterintuitive,
it
right?
does. It does.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the statistics, an average what's considered a balanced market is 6 months worth of inventory. We're down as low as 1.2 months of inventory in March of 23.
Oh, wow.
Ridiculously low, historically low. Inventory has slowly been working its way back towards normal with ebbs and flows, with ups and downs. Right
Mm.
now, we're in one of the downs of that, but we're anticipating it to go back up again. Um, Even with that being said, with us being about two-thirds of what typical inventory would be, the market is acting balanced. And the market is acting balanced in that buyers are jumping, absolutely jumping on homes that are really well prepared and priced within the marketing, within what the market suggests they should be priced within. And they're absolutely rejecting outright and letting homes sit that are either pushing the pricing or aren't prepared for the market.
Right.
And so it's a really finicky market where people are being really trepidatious. So on the seller side, preparing that home and again, ensuring you're with an agent who's advising you potentially the highest you can possibly price the house legitimately, but not overprice it. That's going to be absolutely key in getting your home sold in a reasonable amount of time.
Okay. Great. All right. So we have a couple more minutes. I
Sure.
just want to hit on two more quick questions for you, kind of on
Mhm.
current market state. So you alluded to low levels of inventory, although it is appearing like a balanced market. But I know there's been some change from a compensation standpoint and how things actually get done. And I'm by no means an expert, but can you kind of to the layman give a high level understanding of, I believe it's the NAR settlement and what that means from a pricing standpoint for when, for buyers and sellers and how that impacts kind of the industry. And is that a cost saving? Is it not? Just curious if you could give us a little bit of insight on that.
Sure, sure. So it's a big thing to unpack. There's a lot of intricacies with
I
it,
know it's
and
probably a
you
loaded
know,
question,
it's
but
this is one that normally runs really long, and I'm going to try and make it concise.
okay.
Um, it's I guess overall, not a lot has changed functionally. The
Mhm.
two primary outcomes of the NAR settlement, for those that don't know, the NAR settlement, there was a large lawsuit, class action lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors regarding primarily, it boils down to essentially price fixing when it comes to commissions, where it was being communicated in some areas, not necessarily in ours, and definitely not with us, that commissions are standard, and they're not. They've always been negotiable, and there's a buyer side and a seller side of that transaction. And traditionally, what's happened is when you sell your home, when you're a seller of a home, and you go to pay a commission, you're paying that out of the proceeds of the home. And so you've got your value of the home. You're not paying something. You don't have to have a bank account with the commission. You don't have to have a bank account with those closing costs, generally speaking, because it's going to come out of the value of the home.
Got it. Yep.
Therefore, when buyers, or on the other hand, when buyers are purchasing, they got to have in the bank account 20% down, generally speaking. They've got to have their closing costs with another, 6 to 10%, depending on where you're at. And then if they have to pay their buyer's agent, it's another whatever percentage their buyer's agent is receiving. Most buyers don't have that cash, and especially in an environment where interest rates are higher, it's
Yep.
much more expensive for them to do so. So over time, historically, commissions have just ended up built into the seller side of things, just functionally as a result of buyers saying, "Hey, I don't have it. I'll pay you a little bit more for the house if you pay my commission." So that way I can roll it into my mortgage. So
Yep.
functionally, the commissions got built in. So the NAR lawsuit determined two things. Number one, buyer agent commission cannot be listed in the multiple listing system. It can still be offered by sellers. They cannot limit the seller's ability to incentivize a buyer or a buyer's agent to sell their home. They can't do that. So what they can do is limit where it's listed so that people can't all get together and say, "Oh, these guys are all charging this, so we're going to charge that." They said, so what they determined is we can distribute buyer agent commission offers, offers of compensation through any means, other websites, phone, smoke signal, carrier pigeon, doesn't matter. As long as it's not within the multiple listing system. So there's no, complete aggregate system to be able to look at.
Okay.
And the second determination was that there needs to be more transparency in how buyer's agents get paid. So they determined that buyers must have a buyer agency contract if they are going to look at a home with a buyer's agent. The buyer's agent has to have a contract with that buyer stating, yeah, I'll work for you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. If
Mhm.
you do decide to buy this home, I need to get paid X percent, and whatever that percent is. Um, the unintended consequence that ended up coming out of this is that a lot of buyers, like I said, simply don't have the funds to be able to pay their own agent. So they're looking at
Right.
their agents and they're saying, if that seller is not offering a buyer agency compensation, I can't afford to pay you. I don't want to see that house. So you're getting a little bit of that in there,
Mhm.
along with a negotiation process many times in the offer. The offer says that the seller will pay buyer agent fee of X. The seller comes back, says, I'm willing to pay Y, and so on and so forth. The net result is that actually nationwide, average buyer agency compensation has gone up, not down, but by a very marginal amount. I think it was like 0.02%. It was just,
Mhm.
you know, basically nothing. Where it has had impact is luxury homes. When you're talking high wealth individuals and homes over a million or a million and a half, that's where the fee has gone down a bit. And that makes perfect sense because if you're selling in New York State like we do, an average home right now, $243,000 in the area. My average is generally around 375. Um, uh, Working at 2% is generally not very functional
Mhm.
for a business model. Listing costs are generally $3,000, $3,500 just to get a house on the market.
Right.
And then, but if I'm selling everything that's million, million five and up, I'd happily take that kind of commission on a regular basis.
Right, right. Yeah, no, understood. Yeah, thank you for kind of walking that back. And it's interesting just how uh, the unintended consequences, right? That's a part that it's with every decision, but it's interesting to see how it's playing out here. All right, so one last question for you. For somebody who's like, hey, I want to understand the market value of my home, and I know this is what you do, and there's a lot of analysis that goes into it. But are there any good websites, things I think of Zillow, right? But I often see that that's can be really off. Do you recommend any for people to get just a high level idea? Or is it just, maybe there isn't a great site for this?
For the automated valuation models, there's really, in our area specifically, not so much. If you're
Yep.
looking North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, where you've got development of 350 homes that are relatively the same age, relatively the same size and shape, so to speak. Um, the algorithms that they have work really, really well, and they can get within, I think the average statistic and national statistic is like 7.5%. 8% is where they end up between their estimate and close. When Zillow stopped publishing their average error between their estimate and closing, this was a long, long time ago. It might have gotten better since then, but when they stopped publishing in Steuben County, I believe the number I remember was 25% error between
Woo.
estimate and close price.
Yeah,
Um,
that's big.
it's difficult when you've got, for instance, a 6,000 square foot mansion on the Southside Hill, and across the street is a 2 unit rental.
Yep.
And their algorithms just really can't handle that. And they don't know, with older housing stock, it's difficult because of updates versus older housing. I would say it's useful in that you can get maybe a roundabout, but don't place a lot of stock in it.
Mhm.
Usually, what you're going to want to do with the automated valuation models is you're going to want to look at your tax assessment, your Zillow, your Homes.com, and kind of get a feel where the variation is in those. And you're going to be somewhere likely in that range. Most of the time, those are on the high end of things. Once in a while,
Got
they're
it.
super low. Your assessment, tax assessment, many times used to come back low, but since they've been doing
Right.
a lot of revals, they're actually coming in high a bit recently.
Got it. No, that's a great insight. Using a combination of multiple sources to get to a place that's more realistic. But of course, yeah, for financial planning, it's just important that we have some sort of understanding because, like I said, your home usually plays a big role in figuring out what's next and what you can afford and retirement planning. So. Dan, this was awesome. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Again, some great insights here. So thank you again for your time.
My pleasure. Awesome.
All right. Have a good
Thank you.
day.
You as well. Take care.